some practice. Allowing your whole body to settle, becoming soft and comfortable. The breath becomes easy and effortless as it flows into the body and you let go of any obstructions to your normal, natural breath. Don't alter your breath in any way, just let it be comfortably easy. Softening your neck and your throat, the base of your tongue, releasing your jaw, softening around the eyes, feeling the crown of the head released upward. Every time you exhale, softening the whole body further. Your shoulders sink, your elbows as if they grow heavy, helping your shoulders to sink, softening your wrists and your hands. Allowing your chest to settle and to sink, not holding it up. Your upper back releases, your shoulder blades sink down. Your solar plexus are released. Your belly is soft, releasing your lower back as much as you're able. Softening your glutes and your hips so that your legs are released. Release around your knees, your ankles, your feet, and your toes. Four more minutes of settling and becoming still. Whatever it was that you were carrying around with you earlier, allow it to fall away. When your mind wanders away, you simply return to the present moment by letting go of the distraction. Settling further and further into the practice. As we've been gaining skill from our daily practice, allowing our awareness to soak into our body, which makes us more grounded, more present, softens the body, which slows the mind and the emotions down. We want to emphasize allowing more of our space to settle into stillness this way. And then when you're ready, opening the crown of the head. As a reminder, as I do every day, if you are finding yourself here for the first time and you don't quite know what we're doing, please do click on the link to the introduction video down in the description below. That will make it easier for you to follow along with us in these live sessions without feeling as though you're getting lost. Helping to circulate and draw fresh qi and blood into this area of your tissue, nourishing the flesh of your body through gentle stimulation and opening. As your mind slows down, are you able to feel a bit deeper than simply the surface of the skin? See if you can allow your awareness to soak into that space around the spine, especially around C7 at the top of the thoracic spine, the base of the neck, this big bone here. Allow your awareness to penetrate into the tissues there to see if you can release more deeply than usual. It's nice to feel the warmth radiating out from the tissues. Are you warm enough?
Mm-hmm. Okay, warm, yeah.
Warmth flowing in, softening around the eyes, behind the eyes. Oh, hey, Del, welcome.
Hi, Del.
Remember, even if you're late, definitely start with that seated posture, getting really still. Stillness is always the foundation of the practice. If it helps, to help draw your awareness beneath the surface of the skin, to help you find your way into the body, which I know is a difficult transition time. You can use visualizations, imagery, like water soaking into a sponge or ink soaking into paper. These are classical images, and that's fine, but remember that the use of visualizations eventually become an obstruction. We want to only use them to help us find what's actually going on inside, to help us guide us inward, because often we have a mental block about how we imagine our body and our mind won't try to sink inside because it thinks it can't. So using visualization and imagination can be a wonderful way to guide our awareness in. But then once we're in, as soon as we can, we let go of the imagination in order to stick with the actual experience. Otherwise, for a lot of people, visualizations and imagination become a kind of obstruction. Mel was telling me how red my skin turns when I'm doing this stuff.
Just this one.
Oh, just
Not all of
10
them.
dragons? Okay.
Yeah. And it was just yesterday that I noticed, so I don't know that it's all
Okay.
the same.
It's not me hurting myself, it's just warmth and blood flow reacting to my touch. And not everybody has see-through colored skin. But you do want that much warmth and chi and blood flow to follow your fingers. But if it stays red, then you've done too much. Should just be red momentarily, or reddish, whatever color your skin turns. Opening the space on the jaw, allowing fresh chi and blood to flow into the area. Again, you can imagine water dripping from your fingers, and it soaks in to the space just beneath the skin, opening that point. Circling just in front of the ear. Like ink dripping off of your fingertips, soaking into the paper, beneath the surface, warming and bringing it to life. Whatever imagery you find helpful. And then as soon as you can, when you're simply able to feel that space, drop the imagery and stick with what's actually happening. And your awareness will deepen even further because you will no longer be obstructed by your daydream. Always taking the time to settle and become still, to allow your awareness to accumulate. This is like hitting the save button on the work you've been doing.
It's a really fun way of putting it.
Otherwise, it all just drifts away, especially when you let your awareness, the conscious part of your awareness, become more clearly aware of the changes you've made, like the new level of softness, the new level of plumpness in your flesh. And the body goes, oh, okay, this is something we want to pay attention to. And so we settle, and storing the chi, settling and becoming still, this is all the same process. It's the same thing. And part of that is making these changes more likely to last. So if you just go on to the next thing, then you're unlikely to make any big changes quickly. Right?
Radio.
It's my one tea left. I need to get more tea.
Yeah, that's really nice.
So today, other than emphasizing this quiet mind, we will focus on keeping the chest soft, the upper back easy, but mostly the chest released. So rather than doing this thing where people lift their chest up all the time or pressing it down, instead we allow it to be empty so that chi can sink through it effortlessly without any holding, not holding the breath, not holding the mind. Remember that in the Chinese perspective, the Daoist perspective, often when they talk about the heart, what they're talking about is a quality of the mind. And they're often interchangeable, and sometimes we'll talk about the heart mind. And so part of not obstructing or congesting the heart mind is allowing things to go just like when we're closing. And so we want to keep that level of openness. The moment we start to hold it and tense ourselves up and grip with our mind, everything comes up and gets stuck. So we soften, we release, we sink, and we allow that settled resting quality to become how we stay. And so as we follow through the set, I'll just constantly be reminding you about letting go of your chest, letting go of your upper back, or not compressing your chest. Just be easy. Softening open. You can use your knuckles, your fingertips, the base of your thumb. For some reason, today this open palm feels really nice. Just relieving all of this area through here. Yesterday, on Mel's birthday, she was busily ordering me a gift for my little set here. You guys will see in a week, maybe?
I hope so, yeah, I'm not sure.
I won't tell you what it is, but you'll see it when it's here. I'm slowly upgrading this little space so it's easier to make videos in and to teach from. Bit by bit, gets a little bit better. I also ordered some acoustic phone that I can use to take out the echo in here.
Oh, great. Yeah.
We have a whole room in our home devoted to making these videos and trying to help people learn. And today we are starting, with any luck, our new podcast. So keep an eye out for that. It'll probably just go straight to Patreon for a long time. until it becomes massively popular. And then Melanie becomes a rock star.
Oh, right.
But it will be Melanie and I talking. We were already having fun making icons and thinking of names. It'll be great. Mostly talking about Daoist concepts, I think, and what's going on, all of the practices that we're doing. And at least at this moment, centered around the Book of Changes, the I Ching. So as a reminder, the various channels that go around, large intestine channel goes to the index finger. This is my way of slowly convincing Mel to join me in these videos. It'll take a year or two.
It's taken a while, but he's finally converting me to the dark side.
The dark side. If ZhiCheng Shifu can be tempted to go into video, which he was adamantly against for forever, then COVID came and suddenly he started learning how to use the technology, then we can get Mel on camera. Mel was a model for a long time and now is camera shy. Lung channel, traveling down to the thumb.
We're on the same arm, right? The first arm?
Still on the same arm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes I forget.
And then moving down. Pericardium channel on the underside of the arm goes to the tip of the middle finger. Triple warmer channel. The opposite side goes to the fourth finger. If you're having trouble remembering any of these and they're not just becoming habitual for you, then maybe ask for help and we can create more images. And we have some very imaginative people here. We're happy to help inspire your memory, sometimes in disturbing ways. And then the heart channel running here goes to the little finger as well as the small intestine channel running along the side here. You guys are all wild and chatty in the comment section.
Yeah, we're having a fun chat. Dale and Chris crack me up. Yeah.
From here, remember just above this bone, all the way to the base of the thumb, warming, just helping qi to flow down toward the thumb and to nourish these joints. Good lifetime practice to get into, because these are some very fragile spaces that on almost everybody eventually become painful. They're like the knees and the lower back. We are just constructed in such funny ways. We want to take care of those weak spots.
Yeah, I was scrolling, I think maybe Reddit or something yesterday, and for the first time, at least that I can recall in like a long time, my thumb was just like, I'm done. It's like no more scrolling. It kind of just got really weak or something.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Getting old.
I guess so. On my birthday.
On your birthday. Yeah. Cell phone thumb. It's a whole thing. Technique, cell phone thumb. Very specific injuries. Allowing your awareness to soak into the tissues. Remembering to allow your chest to remain settled. Crown of your head floating up, which helps you to open your upper back. And like we were working on yesterday, the shoulder blades remain settled in the back of the body rather than rolling forward. Your awareness soaking in like liquid. Again, as you reach across, don't let your shoulder come up or your chest lift. Your shoulder stays settled. Your chest stays relaxed and empty, simply moving across. And if you need to, if your breasts are very tender right now or there's just too much going on here, you can always allow the same arm to come back and soften this as best you can. Softening the back of the arm. If you can, comfortably reach to soften a bit of the shoulder blade as well. But again, it depends on if you can do it without contorting yourself too much. This is all just about softening the shoulder blade, releasing the lat through here, softening the base of the arm, the back of the arm. Especially that space just behind the elbow here. That tends to be cold and tight and sore on a lot of people. Just allowing the warmth of your awareness to soak in. If you find your mind bouncing around, notice the distraction. Decide that you are not as interested in that as you are in practicing. And simply let go of the distraction. Soften the distraction. Let your mind come back to the practice. Especially as we advance further, we want to allow that quality to deepen as well. If this remains strictly as a physical practice, it's still beneficial, especially if your technique is good and you're not pushing too hard. Your body will still open. but it is far more effective with your quiet mind settling into the tissues, that gentle, kind-hearted emotional expression also soaking in. It becomes an entirely different practice when you add those. This is the beginning of Nathan practice, this internal medicine. You might notice there's a sense of connection through the arm between these 2 points if you do them both at the same time. It's an interesting effect. Feels good. Nice to sit here in the company of friends, being gentle and loving. I think that this kind of opportunity, not just because of the technology, but just in human history, it's pretty rare that people come together to do things like this in the world. And so it's worth noticing when we have these opportunities to get together and just do something nourishing and kind, and to add more of that into the world than the stuff that tends to get added into the world. We got some feedback yesterday that for some people this causes tension in the shoulders. And so certainly maybe go more slowly, don't reach quite as far, or as they were doing, simply do fewer. Softening your shoulders, make sure that you don't lift your chest as you try to do this, and don't round your chest. This stays empty and free. Things have to be empty and free in order for qi to move through them. And qi moving through, of course, is the point.
And so does that mean if, for example, we can't move all the way up to the shoulder without creating tension, that we shouldn't? That we should stop before that happens?
If you can't do it and can't find a way to do it without tension, because of course we can't do any of these things without tension in the beginning,
Right.
even just sitting here. And so if it's creating more tension than it's releasing, then maybe do it halfway. Slowly creep your way up until your body can be soft enough to do it. Because none of these movements that we're doing, even at the end, should be extreme examples of any kind of practice. And so hopefully we can all find ways to do it. But as Mel's mentioning, if it's just overall creating more tension than it's helping with, then cut the movement in half or just cut it out entirely until you heal enough to be able to include it. Because everybody's so different.
You did both arms?
I did.
Okay. Sorry, I'm very forgetful today.
It's okay. I had to check in because I can feel the effects of it afterward. So I can tell that I did both arms. Soft and easy. Again, hitting that save button. By letting the mind come to rest in that space beneath your hands, your breath settles, your whole body softens. If you were trying to do this while your chest was being lifted, your chi would not sink. Your chi would just go up and your mind would become more busy. It would become harder to breathe. Your emotions might get more agitated. And so simply allowing this softness to occur makes a huge difference.
Anymore?
I'm not going to send you all the way downstairs.
I don't mind. Here,
No, it's too late. Thank you, though. You should just be comfortable. Oh, if you find yourself going downstairs anyway, I'll hand it to you.
Oh,
I'm going to have
yes.
more tea over there.
I'm finding myself going downstairs.
Nope, too late.
right
Nope, I'm practicing again. Thank you, though.
Okay, well then I'll take this one down.
You just want to go downstairs. I see how it is. Softening the chest. Helping to release all of this. As well, let's continue and soften a little bit more this line, which depending on your body will be over more breast tissue or not. But all of the holding lines that run from the ribs that attach to the sternum, simply allow your fingers to brush across them. Again, you're not trying to dig in. You're just sinking your fingers in barely below the surface of the skin. I know my mic likes to pick up the sound for some reason, but I promise I'm not pushing that hard. You can come across the collarbone. Sense of warmth radiating across the chest. Do this on both sides. Easing open. And again, I know I'm not a very good representation of this part of the human spectrum, but there are people with very heavy breast tissue, and they'll end up with striations of muscle and fibrous tissue and cartilage and fascia across here, just as though the body's trying to create belts that hold us back and open. And they often are responding to, the habit of doing this too much or this too much in relationship with carrying too much weight. And it's one of the great gifts, I think, of the modern bra. And so I fully recommend those for people that are finding that their body is responding to extra breast tissue weight as a kind of cause of tension. And so as you soften across here, please help relieve all of that as well. If you've been coughing a lot, this will be an area also that starts to grip and even develop damage. Now let's come to the solar plexus. Easing open. Oops. Make sure this is on. Oh, good. Softening the solar plexus, allowing the chest to sink down to allow this to empty. If you lift your chest, this comes forward and becomes tight because it has to hold across here architecturally. If you release your chest, this can become soft and easy. And as maybe you saw with the breathing video, you can even allow this to expand with your inhalation if you soften. It's not a thing that you do. It's not a practice to try to figure out. It's the side effect of becoming soft. Too often these methods are taught as a technique to try to push and to learn. And all it does is then obstruct the ability to learn it the natural way, so that you can continue progressing after that. Soften until your breath naturally is able to move throughout your whole torso, until your emotions become quiet and comfortable, until your mind slows down. And then a bit below. Are you able to, after this much practice, begin to detect the shape and quality of the fascial layer beneath the skin? In places where it's obstructed, it will feel different. If it's folded up or stretched or striated in certain ways, there's a physical experience you can have of noticing it, but only once we tune into it. It's not magical, it's not mystical in any way. It's simply a deeper level of awareness. Very much like many of the people when I started teaching, they literally could not feel that they were breathing. They could not hear that they were thinking to themselves. It wasn't something they were able to realize. People also tend to not be able to feel that their heart is beating, even though it is a massive wave that travels through their body. It's simply something that we start to ignore. It becomes white noise that we tune out. And we want to get back in touch with all of those layers again. Feel your breath. Become aware of your internal experience mentally. You might even notice that your heart is beating, and you can feel it through your whole body. There's a lot of other waves and movements that travel through the body as well. It's not that you have to develop some super technique to notice them. That would be silly. They're already happening. we just become more quiet, more present, and your awareness becomes better at awaring. So feel into that space beneath the skin. I'm actually curious, for those of you who happen to find yourself pregnant, if the new spaciousness inside and all the movement is making you more aware of your insides. And after the baby finds itself on the outside, I wonder if that awareness, that new depth of awareness, can stay inside. So you can continue to remain aware of all of those places. It's not something I can experiment with myself, so I rely on you good people to try. Just as a reminder, we have the spleen channel, which travels down to the big toe. We have the liver channel, travels down to the big toe. We have the stomach channel, travels down to the second toe. We have the kidney channel that runs down to the bottom of the foot. We have the gallbladder channel runs down to the fourth toe, and we have the bladder channel that runs down to the little toe. Just as a review. Make sure that you are not collapsing or lifting your chest as your hands move to your back. Use whatever part of your hand makes it easier for your shoulders. This whole huge line of thick fascia and tissue that runs all along and connects through here. You want to soften and warm and open. For most people, it's collapsed here and frozen because it's collapsed. Softening the line of tissue below the hip here, emphasizing the movement that moves away from the tailbone and softening the tailbone itself. Don't lift your chest. Don't collapse. Stay neutral. Shoulders in a comfortable position. Your hands continuing to soften. Ideally, at the end of this series, your hands are far softer and more nourished than they were at the beginning. And you are continually using that softness to communicate to your tissues. How does it feel?
Very nice.
Good. This point above the knee. Softening that space behind your knee. And stomach 36, spleen 9. So remember that it's very common that as people start to reach a little bit further than they're comfortable, depending on their body, we start to collapse or we start to really grip hard. If you can, soften your chest, soften your shoulders, your upper back, release your neck long, maintain that release, and soften from the hips so that all of this stays released and long. Shoulders are in a neutral, comfortable position. If you need to find a different posture just based on whatever it is that your body is doing right now, please do experiment a bit. And if you feel like sharing in the comment section what it is that works for you, we're always happy to hear. And it's fine if this process takes twice as long, 3 times as long. You get to have your practice and make it comfortable and nourishing for you. Gallbladder 34 on the outside. Easing these points open. Same thing here. I can either simply open my hips and then circle comfortably. I'm not holding myself up at all because my back is relaxed. Or you can pivot gently from your hips. Whichever one feels better for you, but do not tighten your back or your shoulders as you create this movement. Ideally, this movement should be a part of a set that helps to soften your lower back. This is part of the kidney nourishing series. And if you tighten your lower back while you're doing this, it's only weakening your kidneys.
And so for people whose backs are already really tight, what would you recommend?
Other than learning to soften them?
Yeah, I mean, because I guess in my mind, when I would do practices like this, I could feel the tension. Like my back was already really tense just on a normal day. And then some of these movements would exacerbate that. And so I guess I'm just kind of wondering if in that case, it's worth, I don't know, just getting your thoughts on
it. The same as with the arm.
Yeah.
I would say that a lot of these movements themselves draw awareness to our levels of tension that are already pre-existing. And so if I'm unable to soften my hips and my lower back, for instance, by doing this, maybe it makes me hyper aware of that pull as they want to pull back. And so in that case, this movement might be a really nice way to practice softening it as you're emphasizing that movement. It might even be something that we give you to learn to soften your back. And yet, like with this one, our goal here is to continually soften and release. And so if at the end of this practice, your back is sore and things got a little worse, then we need to find a different way. And you can either, if this position is easier, you could do a one-handed thing like this and soften the channels.
That's kind of what I was wondering.
Yeah, I think it's all fine to adjust it. A lot of the things that I do here, if I'm sitting by myself in a meditation cushion and I go through this set, it doesn't look like this because I'm not sitting in a chair worried about what it looks like on camera. And so definitely always find a way that it gives you the actual benefit. And that's one of the reasons I'm always constantly telling you, this is what you're looking for. This is the effect we want, because otherwise we don't know what we're doing.
Right.
And like, this was supposed to help me. And all we're doing is practicing it in a way that makes us worse.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a common refrain in the world of Qigong. This was supposed to make me feel better, and all it did was drive me partially insane or deeply injured me or created some problem. Way too common. In general, one of the reasons I like this set is because it's a wonderful way to emphasize this quality that's a foundation of these practices, which is softness, gentleness, kindness, presence, not forcing. And this skill has to be present when we do any other practices in Qigong. And again, one of the reasons I don't teach a lot of the methods that we're learning, as part of this larger system, is because I know that there are people who will practice this that have not yet learned how to quiet their mind or how to be gentle and effortless. Everything that they do is with this gripped fist of a mind that they use against themselves, even with self-hatred and other qualities. And so all the practice will do is make them worse. And that is a really common problem in the Qigong world. So we have to develop this quality of the ability to go at least a little bit. We don't have to be perfectly still with our mind, but there's this point when it's being wild and damaging us like a wrecking ball versus just being a playful monkey that's jumping around. You have to find where that line is and help to end up on the side where things are friendly and maybe you're learning how to deal with them, but it's not actively damaging you. And if you can do a practice like this and be relatively present and grounded and feel your body the whole time being gentle, then you're a long way toward developing those skills. Do you think that makes sense as an explanation? Good.
Yeah, I think about how ZhiCheng Shifu often says the movement only goes as far as the movement goes.
That's right. And we're not trying to recreate a specific movement. We're trying to go through. Mm-hmm. And in this case, through is referencing the posture, like the movement of my spine is through releasing to the top of my head. If I'm more concerned about the posture, the way it looks, I'm not paying attention to the principles or throughness. Throughness meaning, by the way, just that it is the movement of energy doesn't go to the place, but goes through the place. Through, not to. That I end up faking it, that maybe I think my head is supposed to be up. And so I pull really hard to lift my head. And people who don't know what they're looking for think, oh, they have a nice upright neck. But all they're doing is adding tension and causing problems. They end up with headaches and all kinds of issues, instead of releasing the neck so that the head floats up and chi now flows through and it becomes stable and settled and integrated, where tension only ever disconnects and causes problems. And so we have to know what we're doing and recreate it in a way that works for our bodies, all of our unique, beautiful, individual bodies. Following this principle of openness and softness, knowing that what we're reaching for is a peaceful heart and a settled mind, connected body, friendly qualities in our emotional structure. And if what you are working on is developing more and more in that direction, then you're going in the right direction. Softening open. Continuing to release the chest. Just as a reminder, chest is easy, the upper back is released. I know that for some of you, it's very difficult to reach your feet for lots of different reasons. And remember that you can use your feet to massage your feet, like I was showing before. You can also, if you simply cannot reach your feet today, maybe you've been injured or your body is doing new things, then simply place your awareness in your feet. And as we've been practicing everywhere else, allow your awareness to soak into the tissues, spreading out through the fascial layer. Feel that space. The better you get at it, the easier it becomes, until later, hopefully at the end of 100 days of this practice, you won't be able to understand how you didn't notice it before. That's the goal. It's just obvious and easy. Oops. Mel's favorite part. Easy and opening. Fingers soaking into this point on the bladder channel. Bladder 57. This point became famous initially for softening the calf, softening the lower back. And then after several hundred years, it became known even more for treating hemorrhoids, of all things. So if that's an issue that you contend with, spend extra time every day on this point, and you will probably find it helpful. kidney 1 point on the bottom of the foot, Yongquan. Liver 3 on the top of the foot, liver 3, liver 4. Spleen points on the side of the foot. The only reason I mention it's usually how it's translated is this is often talked about in Qigong classes and Tai Chi classes, as well as the point, the Lao Gong point in the center of the hands. It's same point, different spots in the body, or the 100 meetings point on the top of the head by weight. So the more you know. Okay.
You're not wearing your rainbows. Would you like this tea?
No, thank you. It does look good, though. I'll drink it during question time. Remember that as you sit, you want to make sure that you're not pushing your knees forward a whole bunch, or you're not hurting yourself as you get down. Use a chair or a stool if you need to. If you need to have something that helps you get down to the ground in a way that does not put pressure on your joints, please do use it. Eventually getting up and down feels very easy, but you want to make certain that your body stays connected and through as you sink down, you settle toward the ground, so that you're not putting pressure on your joints, you're not tightening up your body. All of these qualities should feel easier and easier. For some people, of course, as their bodies age, as seems to happen to all of us, I'm getting pretty old, that our joints start to fail and things start to hurt, and it's a little bit more difficult to do things. And of course, a huge portion of that healing has to then come with learning to accept our bodies and the changes that are coming along. And that's very difficult for a lot of people. It's a very human condition. And one of the things that I like to tell people is that as soon as you can, at any stage of your life, start to become comfortable with your body falling apart. Become comfortable with pain, because these are things that are part of every human life. So that pain in your body as it fails and the experience of attachment to your body failing, that suffering doesn't have to come along with the pain. The suffering is always way worse than the pain. Allowing this movement down beneath the hips. Full circles. Being gentle and kind. Remember that your legs are soft, your thighs are soft. Keeping your back released, your chest is easy. Shaking the heavenly pillar. kind and gentle to your body, supporting it in whatever way is needed. You can create a little nest for yourself. And spending just a couple of minutes letting yourself release to the floor, allowing your awareness to spread out throughout your whole body, noticing these changes we've made. Hopefully you feel warm and open. And then when you're ready, very comfortably, finding yourself back in a seated position.
So sorry about that. Thought my volume was off. Dang spam callers.
That'll wake everybody up. Your awareness settles into the center of your body, staying anchored in the center, spreading your awareness out through your whole body, especially to this new layer that we've been opening. And then remaining anchored in the center, spread your awareness out to the space around you. Thank you very much. It's nice to have you all here. If there are any questions, feel free to ask. I assume there are Del questions, but if anybody else has questions, feel free to put them in there. I will grab my tea that Mel was so kind to get for me. In my Totoro cup.
All right, so the first question I see in here is from Del. Can we do a practice one day from a meditation cushion? I would like to learn to massage myself from there too.
Sure, we can probably include that. I'm sure I'll just do it anyway because of I'm always moving around to different places and filming in different locations. But my hesitation is that most people really should not be sitting in a meditation cushion posture because usually their bodies are too tight. And of course, certainly some people are able to do it. I just so often see people sitting and their knees are really high and their bodies are hunched forward and they're straining to hold the position instead of softening open so that their hips are higher than their knees, their body is round so that their legs don't fall asleep. The seated meditation posture should be completely comfortable. It shouldn't be a strain. And so the number one reason when people are asked about it that they stop meditating is because the posture is so uncomfortable, because people don't recognize that the posture is not the meditation. And so since the meditation posture, what we're calling the seated posture, is so uncomfortable for so many people, usually we should just avoid it. And so probably at some point, the way that I sit on the ground and do some of the movements. I'll just be demonstrating them. But it's not likely that I'll teach a whole class for that position, just because I don't think most people should be in that position for a while, at least until their bodies soften open.
And we have a question here from Chris. He says, I only have one question. Is reflexology legit?
Chris is always trying to start trouble. Reflexology is a newer thing. A lot of it is based on traditional Chinese acupoints and like there's a microcosm on the feet, the way there is in the ear and the hand, and it can be very helpful. However, a lot of what I have seen written down is just invented by somebody relatively recently. The problem with that, with newer systems in general, is that usually they are untested. Like, how many people can a single person in their lifetime test this on? Like, I've treated thousands of people, but I don't feel like I should be creating my own system. And so people often, they will go and they'll have some experience and they'll say, now I want to have a whole system of my own so I can brand it and sell it. And it's untested. And even Chinese medicine, traditionally, it was funny when we were learning about herbs, and I was, so what about this herb that's from South America, or this herb that's pretty well known that's from the United States? And they'll say, well, traditionally, for an herb to start to feel like it's well known enough to become part of the Chinese medicine view, and there's this list of how many generations it takes, human generations, and it's basically like 500 years. That we have to be studying and making use of something for 500 years before it makes its way into like the new compendium and to be considered safe and well understood. But do we do that in our culture? We'll have somebody think about it for 5 months, and then they'll make a book, and then they'll sell it, and maybe it worked for that person or their first person they treated or something. And so I always have hesitations around new systems, is what I'm trying to say. And reflexology is one of those. And I have not heard of it working that well for people in a way that isn't just if somebody was getting a foot massage, the side effects of that happening, the level of relaxation as their chi is drawn down, and somebody with kind and loving touch works on points and things like that. And so that's my hesitance around giving a full endorsement of it. But if you find it helpful, then 100% you should do it. But I wouldn't put a ton of money or time into studying it personally. But what do I know?
All right. I don't see any other questions. There are lots of really great, thoughtful, fun, and in some cases very funny comments in the chat that I would definitely encourage you to read later.
I always read the comments later. Yeah.
There is a comment here that you might want to respond to, just since we're on the topic. Del says, I can go full lotus, but only for like 10 minutes before I start going numb.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that means that you shouldn't be in it. And in general, unless you have very open hips, I don't recommend full lotus. When I asked my own instructor if I should be developing it, he said there isn't really a reason to. It's a very stable posture, but there aren't like special side effects for it. Basically, if you haven't developed it by the time you're a child, or by the time you hit puberty, there are certain qualities of your body that solidify and become how they are. There's a whole series of traditional practices that you're supposed to do up until the time when you hit puberty and your body solidifies. There's a name for it. And for those people, it's usually fine because that's all they've ever done. Their body's open for it. It doesn't cause any strain. There's no elastic pull back as they get into the position. Their bodies just go whoop and their feet cross. So for those of you who don't know, the lotus posture that we're talking about is when both of your feet are facing upward on top of either side of your leg. It's a very traditional posture that you see in photos. And I asked my instructor about developing it, and he said there isn't really a reason to. He can do it because he was doing it as a kid. But it's just a stable posture, but you can get stable in lots of postures and you get all the same benefits. So it's not really worth doing, especially if your legs are going to sleep, which means that you're cutting off blood flow and chi flow, and it's actually bad for you. You would develop it as a very slow opening process. But again, at least to pass on the wisdom of my own instructor, because I don't practice the lotus position, is that there isn't a reason to do it unless it's very easy. And so you could just fall into it. Or if you find yourself and you happen to be a child and you want to start developing those skills, go for it. But we want to be gentle on our joints, and anything that pushes and pulls on our joints, then it's something that we avoid until we open enough to allow them to happen on their own without pushing and pulling. Like this posture. For a lot of people, this posture that I'm in, this Japanese seiza posture, which is just means correct sitting. I've been doing this since I was a kid because I was doing Japanese style martial arts. And even when I was studying traditional Japanese carpentry with a master here, I was apprenticing for years, we would sit like this and we would do all of our sharpening in this position. And so this became very comfortable for me. It's always been comfortable, but I wouldn't recommend it to people just to jump into it, because for most people it's painful, and it's not, there isn't really a huge benefit to doing it. You're just sitting in a different position. And so there are far better things to work on, is my short answer. Does that like a full answer? Okay. Again, I don't mean to just be critical of all these things that people are talking about. Do reflexology if it feels good. Sit in a lotus position if it feels good, but don't put your energy into things that might be harmful. Just since I'm not there to be like, stop that. But people should know their own body. And if it feels fine and open for you, then go ahead and do it. But don't wait until things go numb or start to hurt, because that means you just cut off all qi and blood flow. And what we are trying to do is the exact opposite of all of those things. Open and open and open like a flower, like that lotus flower, until the body just embraces new positions, until I can just sit this way because my body is simply open. But I don't have to force my way into it. I just stay like this. If I start to get uncomfortable, I would get up. But there's no reason to be like, okay, pushing through it, because that doesn't really help very much, unless you're suffering from some sort of injury and you're doing like physical therapy or something. But that's a pretty special situation for most people.
So we have another question here from Del. He says, since we're on the topic of Daoist podcasts, what do you think about Damo Mitchell? I have mixed feelings about him.
He seems probably like a very nice person. He has genuine skill. Mel and I were just talking about him this morning. He'd probably be a fun person to hang out with, although I doubt he has any time. He seems to have access to a genuine lineage, and it's pronounced Damo.
Damo.
Yeah, that's the way he pronounces it, at least. But I've seen him on social media, and I've known of him for years. I've never met him. And I've seen some things that I would consider to be problematic, occasionally dangerous, scary things that make me go, And at the same time, probably for people that find themselves vibing with him, I would say that he's a genuine teacher who has a genuine level of skill and a genuine lineage to pass on. And so probably worth studying with. Just not my personal style because of some of the ways that he approaches certain things. But that's more like taste rather than an objection to him as a person, because there's certainly plenty of Qigong and Tai Chi and other internal arts, internal alchemy teachers out there that are kind of like, they're famous frauds, but to not put a fine point on it, he is not one of them. He is the real deal as far as I can tell. And seems like a genuinely kind and interested person. Just not quite my style for everything that he says, and thinks I can't endorse everything that he says. That's my hesitance around it, because I've seen some very problematic things. But as a person, he seems like a lovely guy. Do you have anything to add? You've seen some of his stuff.
Oh, I've only seen like a handful of videos. But I think you articulated what I would probably say as well. Yeah.
In general, I would give him the overall thumbs up, not an enthusiastic endorsement, but I certainly have nothing bad to say about him.
Yeah, Adele says, even some of his philosophy is questionable. He once said the body is stupid, which I don't agree with.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. And so it's like that. There's a lot of those things. Some of that may just be coming from his tradition, because there are lots of different traditions out there. They don't all agree. And yet maybe all of them develop certain skills. It's not like there's one right one and everybody else is wrong. Every system develops something in particular. And so that's why it's worth being careful, choosing a teacher, choosing a system, following a lineage that feels like something that you would want to cultivate for yourself. I am usually very careful. And the major thing that I try to warn people about, because there's a lot of systems out there. And now I'm stepping away from talking about Memo in particular, because I don't want to make people think I'm talking about him. Just that be careful with systems that seem to cause mental problems. It's the nicest way to put it. You'll find lots of systems where a huge preponderance of the teachers have, what we say online, we say unalive themselves, the kind way, or they have major mental emotional issues themselves, or lots of physical issues themselves. And you want to look at the fruit and flower of a lifetime of practice. Sometimes people chase powers, and that always leads down a bad road. What you want to do instead is to allow yourself to, well, nothing wrong with powers. I don't want to say that. For myself, those kinds of things aren't interesting. For me, what interests me is a healthy body, a kind and open heart, free of emotional suffering, a mind that is quiet, that is free of noise and delusions, and the ability to have healthy relationships, the ability to relate with my environment well, the ability to age well, the ability to connect with a lineage, because that's interesting to me. And at the same time, not everybody wants those things. Some people want other things, and you can often see arrogance in people when they talk about what, they're the ones that know, and everybody else is stupid, or you see people laughing at other people and stuff as though they're bad, and only if they were as good as me. Like, you'll see that in some teachers, and that is a really bad sign, because that's the first kind of thing that should go, especially if they're teaching awakening and healing and that kind of stuff. When you see somebody puffing themselves up, walk away, because something in their practice has gone wrong, and you don't want to copy that. And so find genuine people, kind people, humble people, healthy people, mentally, emotionally stable people, and then at least you're in the right ballpark. And so that's what I might add.
Yeah, and I would only just add very quickly that
thank you.
I think ZhiCheng Shirhu is one of those people.
Yeah.
You and I have been really spoiled by him, because he is as wise as he is cultivated in the martial arts and in Qigong and all of these physical practices. He's really cultivated himself internally. And so
he's a good example.
For those in the Seattle area.
That's right. If you find yourself in Washington, or if you just want to travel out, or you want to meet him online, I highly recommend it. Yeah. I mean, I've been living with him for 7 years. And there's this one famous thing you'll hear about people, they study with their teachers and say, never study or never live with your teachers, never get to know them, because then you'll always be disappointed. And to that, I sort of give somebody the side eye, like, what do you mean? They only hang out with somebody if they can fake it well in the school? That's a bad sign. I've heard that from a lot of teachers over the years, actually, including Memo. And certainly their teachers should be human. In fact, humanness is what we're trying to develop. They should seem human, not otherworldly, because that's a bad sign also. That's also another kind of ego or disconnection. And one of the nice things about living with your teachers, you get to see if they're faking it or not, to put it kindly. And talk to the people that are around people all the time. Find out how they are when they don't think anybody's looking. That's how you know how they actually are. And that's one of the scary things as well about jumping into systems that you don't know. Do the research. Get to learn about people who are have been around them for a long time. If you can, talk to their children and their spouses and find out how they are. I mean, we were talking about somebody who does those cold practices, famously cold practices. You look into how they are with their children and their family. And, I was listening recently to interviews with another very famous practitioner who's just apparently a psychopath. And it's just, these are not things you want to copy. I don't care if they could touch me with one finger and fling me across the room. That still is not a skill you want to develop, because maybe somewhere in that practice is something poisonous, and it's not what you want, because the ability to throw somebody across the room with one finger is just not that worthwhile. It's probably fun for a day or two. What does it really give you, And so cultivate what is the genuine, as we would say in Taoism. Cultivate the genuine. Become a zhenren, a genuine person. Become a changren, if you want, which is kind of like a normal person. But you want to become a real person, and all of the good qualities that go with that. And then immortality is the thing we cultivate as we become free of the part of us that's always dying,
I got to run to a meeting at work, so I'll say goodbye. There's one more question in the chat.
There is.
If you have the time.
Is it on the bottom?
Mm-hmm. I think it was, can you share any footage of ZhiCheng Shifu? I don't know if it's...
No, not on here, but I mean, he's online, so you could just find his stuff. We had to cancel the New Year's thing that was supposed to happen this Saturday, where you'd likely get to see me get thrown around. But ZhiCheng he's a very humble guy. He barely wants to have his name on his own website. It's this Taoism being invisible thing, like where it's not about you. It's about the system. It's about people. It's about healing people. It's not about me, the me. And so often what you see within a system is it's all about the person. It's me. And that's usually a bad sign. We want to become free of all of that stuff. And everything that we should do is always getting free of delusion, what we're imagining, what we think is happening, how we want it to be, the craving. All of that stuff has to get set aside. That's where healing comes in. And so, you can definitely look up ZhiCheng. Some of the stuff that's online about him is stuff that got put up without his permission or those kinds of things, because he really doesn't like to be there. He is slowly putting up his own website. We've been working on it for years. He keeps adding to it, but he hasn't made it public yet, because that's how he works. He's a Taoist. He does things how he wants. And so right now he's just at home playing the guqin and chilling out and resting as COVID runs through our community. But so far it seems like everyone's doing okay. Because of the kind of community we have, we tend to attract people who are not well. They're very old or they're sick. They're coming for healing. And so we always have to be really careful in this kind of community, because people, like at the monastery, part of the time it's like a kind of hospital. And so people are going there to heal. And so it's a space that often has fragile people in it. And we want to be really careful. So we're all sort of backing away from each other and trying to make sure that nobody gets sick. And so anyway, I'm not sure how I got into this subject. I'll read more of the stuff. I do have, if you check out the links and things that I attach on all these videos, the monastery is called Qigong, and you'll see a link to it on Instagram. On Instagram, it's called the Yangsheng Gardens. Yangsheng means nourishing life. But so you should find those links everywhere on all my stuff. And then if you want to look at his stuff, it's the Daoist Studies Institute.org, which, again, I include links all the time to everything. So you have to actually just look down below and you'll see stuff. But I hope that helps. Superpowers are awesome. That's funny. Yeah, I would say that be very careful with superpowers, like trying to be something, because that is where all suffering ends up. And so in a way, it's, I talk about it with ZhiCheng Shifu, and one of the reasons he doesn't show off these skills that he'll do like in his living room when we're hanging out is because people attach to that. and they miss the actual point, which is becoming free. And anytime that we want something, oh, I'd love to have that. Oh, if something can sound cool, it would be really fun to be able to breathe underwater or something like that. But if I want it and I attach it as though it builds up a sense of myself, that's what suffering is. I'm not sure how much you know about suffering, but we want to become free of all of that stuff as soon as we can. And that's just a much healthier way to live. So those are my thoughts. And I'm going to go off and go make lunch for Mel and go hang out. And thank you all for joining. It might just be you and me, Del. Oh, thanks. I love you too. I'm glad to have you here. Train me on a secret cultivation. I've learned lots of fun secret cultivations. But honestly, if I could ever teach anybody anything, like the one jewel that I would pass on, the priceless thing, because I used to go around and ask people that, what if you could pass on any one thing before you died, what would that be? And I've heard all kinds of things, including like their favorite bank and like what kind of family they want. Like people will give you all kinds of interesting things. And for me, the thing that I would want people to know is that it's genuinely possible to feel content, settled, and peaceful all the time. Like I haven't had suffering now for, I don't know, less than a decade, but coming up on that now. And like you still have emotions. You still feel highs and lows, and you feel really happy or you feel sleepy. But it's possible to always have this sense of peaceful contentment through all of it. So nothing ever bothers you. And I think that most of the time what people want when they want powers is they're hoping that they can feel like that. What people really want deep down is to be able to sit in a chair at home and feel perfectly at peace. Everything is just free and open. They're not grabbed by their feelings and their thoughts. They're just there. So even if they have a broken leg or something, they're just perfectly fine. And that is the real jewel. I wish people could know that so that they could work toward that, because people think that if they have lots of money or they have superpowers or they look a certain way, then I'll feel good about it. But that's not ever where that comes from. And so it is, I can promise you, it's entirely possible for every person to cultivate that. They just have to do the practices that cultivate in that direction, which is why I warn people about not doing practice that pushes them in another direction. Thank you.